Hello friend, if you are still googling what is the best Linux distro, then stop right now. Because Linux does not have a one-size-fits-all version. What works for someone else might become a completely wrong choice for you. Instead, go to distrowatch.com and use their search tool. And within 2 minutes, you will have a personalized list of distros that actually fit your needs, not what some random person on the internet think is the best. If you have never heard of DistroWatch, here is what you need to know. DistroWatch is a website dedicated to free and open source operating systems. It primarily features Linux and tracks every major distro, listing their release announcements and providing detailed information on each one. However, the real magic of DistroWatch is hidden in its search page, a tool that allows you to filter distributions based on your preferences. And today I will walk you through exactly how to use this tool, question by question. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly which distro to test and which one to ignore. So let's start. First of all, go to distrowatch.com. On the homepage, you will see different distro bulletins, release announcements, and many other informations. But we are not here for that. Click the search link on the top mid section and this will take you to the search page. Once you are there, you will see not one but two different search forms. One is a drop-down style and the other one uses checkboxes. They might look different, but both of them achieve exactly the same thing, helping you narrow down from hundreds of Linux distributions based on your personal preferences. Both the forms have 14 questions covering topics such as operating system types, their categories, country of origin, desktop interface, release model, and so on. So, use whichever one you find more intuitive. For this walkthrough, I will stick with the top one. The first question we have is about operating system type, and we have 5 options: All, BSD, Linux, Solaris, and other OS. Now, if you are unsure about any question, leaving it as the default is always a safe choice. But since we are looking for the best Linux distro, I will go with Linux. However, you can choose from BSD, Solaris, and even other operating system if you want to try something entirely different. At number 2, we have distribution category. This is where you tell DistroWatch what you want your operating system for. Like, you need something for beginner, education, gaming, privacy, or maybe to revive an old computer. For our test, I am specifically looking for a beginner-friendly Linux distro, so I will choose beginners. But if you are unsure, the best option you can select is desktop, which will list all the distros that are meant to be run on a personal computer. Next, number 3 is country of origin. My advice here is unless you have a strong reason to pick a specific country, just leave this as default. That way, you will get the best distros from all around the world. Selecting a country will limit your results dramatically and will show only those distros that are developed in that particular country you have selected. So, I will go with all for now. The fourth question is based on. So, what does it mean? Usually, what happens is, in the world of free and open source operating systems, users and hobbyists create new flavors or distros from existing ones, often just to add features or to change the aesthetics. Therefore, to list all the popular distros, the best option I can go with is the default one. However, if you want, you can filter the result by selecting from the likes of Arch, Debian, Fedora, and so on. But in that case, the result will only list those distributions which are based on the project you have selected. For example, Manjaro is based on Arch, Ubuntu is based on Debian, and Bazzite is based on Fedora. Then the fifth question we have is not based on. And as the name suggests, this is the opposite of the last question. Meaning, if you select an option here, any distribution based on that project will be excluded from the final result. Therefore, the best way to use this is to use it with question number 4. For example, you can keep number 4 as the default and in number 5, select one option. Let's say Gentoo, which is considered as one of the hardest distro to use and maintain. So when the results are listed, it will remove all the distros based on the Gentoo family and your results will be refined. But for our beginner search, I will leave this as default. Then at number 6, we have desktop interface. Now this can get a bit technical. If you are completely new to the world of free and open source operating systems, options listed here might be confusing for you. So, my recommended advice for beginners is to always lean towards desktop environments like GNOME, KDE, XFCE or Cinnamon because they are designed for ease of use. But if you truly do not have any idea, leaving it as default is perfectly fine. And I will also stick with it to see more varieties in the result. After that, question number 7 is about architecture, or in simple words, the CPU type. If you are using a single board computer like a Raspberry Pi, you will have to go with the ARM option. Or if you happen to be on something different, like a RISC-V PC or an older PowerPC, then you have to select according to your CPU type. But for the majority of the users who are using modern Intel or AMD processors, the simple answer is x86_64, which is commonly known as x64. Then comes package format. If you are looking for an absolute beginner distros, then there are only 3 viable options, which are Deb, Flatpak and Snap. Not only they are easy to use, but you will find tons of help and troubleshooting guide on the web. But to get a variety of options, I will go with the default. Next, number 9 is release model. This is an important question, so listen carefully. We got 5 options in total. The default one is all. Then we have fixed, meaning selecting this option will list those distros which release a new version of their operating system in a fixed schedule, like every year. Then there is fixed LTS, meaning these distros also release a new version in a fixed schedule, but they are always based on an LTS or a long-term support kernel. Next is semi-rolling and rolling. These distros do not focus on releasing a new version every year. Instead, they focus on constantly updating their current ones. So, if you select a semi-rolling distro, you will receive updates constantly, sometimes every 2 to 3 days. In case of rolling release distros, you will receive updates almost every day, meaning you will always have the latest features. But in amateur hands, they can be more prone to breaking, whereas fixed release are considered more stable and safe for beginners. So, in my opinion, fixed is the best option here. But if you like a little bit of adventure, you can go with semi-rolling. Next, in number 10, we have install media size. To be honest, in the modern Linux scene, this criteria is pretty much irrelevant. And so is number 10, installation method, and number 12, multi-language support. Because with widespread fast internet and large USB drives, the size or method of installation rarely impacts the final outcome. And today, virtually every modern installer and desktop environment support multiple languages right out of the box. Therefore, we can leave all 3 of them as default and move on. Our second last criteria is init software. And like number 6, this is pretty much technical too. Actually, init software is the first thing that starts in a GNU Linux operating system when you press the power button and boot up your computer. It manages all the services, processes, and overall system state. Systemd is by far the most common init software in modern Linux distros. But some hardcore Linux users absolutely hate it because they believe Systemd does not follow the core Unix concept of modularity and minimalism. Plus, it is highly complex and centralized. So, they prefer popular alternatives like Runit, sys5, and OpenRC. But if you are just starting or frankly do not care about the behind-the-scene debates, Systemd is what you will encounter most, and it is perfectly fine. But again, to get more variety, I will leave this as default. And finally, at number 14, we have status. And this is super important as well. If you check the options, we have active, dormant, and discontinued. Active means these distros are actively maintained. Dormant means these distros are not maintained properly and they haven't seen updates for more than 2 years. And at last, discontinued means these distros are no longer being developed and they are basically dead. So the obvious choice here is active. Because for security and stability, you always want an active distro. Plus, using a dormant or discontinued operating system is a recipe for disaster. So, I will select active. Alright, the selection process is complete. Now, let's hit the submit query button and see what DistroWatch recommends for us. And just like that, our hundreds of choice has been narrowed down to just 13 options. If you look at the first 10 listed distros, Linux Mint, Zorin OS, Ubuntu, Elementary OS, Tuxedo OS, Linux Lite. These are all highly recommended beginner-friendly distros. Plus, all of them are based on the Debian family, which means if you ever need help, there is a massive community ready to assist. And see that number in parentheses next to each name? That's DistroWatch's popularity ranking, a good indicator of how widely these distros are searched for. To know more about these distros, simply click on their name and it will take you to the distribution's dedicated information page. And these pages are treasure troves of information. Here you will find everything you need, starting from basic information to website links, community forum links, download page links, independent reviews, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Head over to distrowatch.com and use this search tool to find your personalized list. But here is the most important part. Do not just follow my exact selections. This is your journey to finding the perfect distro. So play with these forms, experiment with them, and see how it affects your results. And then, don't stop there. The next crucial step is to test them out. So download a virtual machine and install at least 4 or 5 of the top picks. Play around, get a feel for them, and I guarantee you will find the perfect Linux distro in no time. And if you want even more beginner-friendly ways to narrow down your search, check out my previous video where I cover 2 more useful tools to find the best Linux distro. The link is in the description. Also, let me know in the comments what criterias did you use and which distros you are testing. And if you have found this walkthrough helpful, give a like and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. I will catch you in the next one.